Okay, here we go. Number 3, 2010, number 3. Um, we want to estimate with 95% confidence the proportion of households in its country or county that own at least one dog. Interpret the 95% confidence level in this context. Interesting question because we want to interpret the confidence level, not the confidence interval. So it's asking a little bit different question than maybe what we typically ask or traditionally ask in class. So what does 95% confidence level mean? Well, let me say it in words, and then we'll answer it. Um, and then we'll write it down. For each sample we take, we can make a confidence interval, right? And for each interval, are we guaranteed that, or we're 95% confident that the true population proportion will be in that interval? So what exactly does that 95% mean? It means 95% of all my samples will give me an interval that contains the true population proportion. That's what we need to write to explain. So we will say this: 95% of all samples of a given sample size will produce an interval that will contain the true population proportion. Now put it in context: population proportion of households uh, that own that own at least one dog. Okay, so 95% of all samples of a given sample size will produce an interval that will contain the true population proportion of households that own at least one dog. Okay, so whereas 5% of the samples are going to give us an interval that miss the true population proportion. Okay? In other words, another way to think of it is, remember, the bigger the confidence level, the bigger our interval is, so we're more likely to capture the true population proportion. Okay, B. They give us the conditions for calculating a 95% confidence interval have been verified, and we've got a confidence interval of 0.417 plus or minus 0.119, which is 0.298 to 0.536. Okay, and B says this: national claim that 39% of all households owned at least one dog, which is right in the middle there, sort of, or pretty close to it. Does the Humane Society's interval estimate provide evidence that the proportion of dog owners in its county is different than the claimed national proportion? Well, no. No, because 39% is in the interval, right? This is the interval that is used for to estimate the proportion of all households that own one dog, right? And 39% is in it, so we have no reason to think that it's any different. Okay, so this county's no different than what the National Pet Association says. So this is the claim for the national this is what the National Pet Association claimed. National claim. Oops. Try to get this straight here. The National Association claimed this. And because 39% is in this interval, we have no reason to believe that this county is different than the national proportion. Okay, that makes sense. If it was 55%, then I go, wait a second, it is different because this is the range for the national proportion, but ours is bigger than that, so it must be different. So no reason to think it's different. C. I'm going to do C over here. How many households were selected in the sample? Show how you obtain your answer. Well, how do I determine how many were in the sample? Well, I know the margin of error is 0.119. And well, I know for my, and I also know this, in general, p hat is plus or minus z star square root p hat q hat over n, right, for my confidence interval. And I know this number is my margin of error. I know z star, I know p hat, q hat, and I could find n. Does that make sense? So I know z star for 95%, 1.96 square root of p hat is, that's my sample, 0.417. Q hat is 1 minus 0.417, 0.583 over n equals, and the margin of error is 0.119. This is the margin of error over here. Okay, plus or minus, whatever it is you're adding. Solve this for n. Square root of 0.417 times 0.583 over n equals 0.119 divided by 1.96. 0.06. I would not round yet. 0.7. Square both sides. 0.583 over n. Square that number. I didn't change it in my calculator. 0.003686. And then I'm going to multiply by n and divide by that, so I get 0.417 times 0.583, 0.003686 equals n. So I've got 0.417 times 0.583 divided by second answer. N equals 65.95, so n is, must be 66. Families, households in my sample. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, there you have it. See you next time.